Welcome. Happy Thursday, everybody. The weather is beautiful. We're getting closer to the summer. Everything smells great. I have to say, May is my favorite month of the year. I think that everything is so green and juicy and full of hope. It's not too hot, it's not too cold. New York is beautiful. So many things are in the works. I'm gonna wait for some of you to join me today. What am I going to talk about today? First of all, I just want to remind everybody that the deadline for filing your taxes was extended by May 17th. For our clients, our potential clients, taxes are very important. Please go to good accountants. Sometimes getting the most return is not necessarily the answer, because if you're in an immigration case is pending, you need to have correctly filed taxes, which doesn't necessarily always translate to the most amount. I do sometimes get phone calls from our clients when they're at the accountant's office and they'll ask me a question about their marital status, about their immigration cases. That is completely fine to do. If you have a doubt about the way that you should be filing, or your CPA wants, to quickly talk with us, please, I'd rather you give them the phone and have them have a little chat with me than have to then amend taxes and do other things. So next, as we know, the cases in India are surging. The borders have been closed. Biden's administration, our president's administration, severely restricted travel between United States and India. There will be, of course, if you're a green card holder, if you're a citizen, you have the ability to come back here to United States. Make sure that you look at the latest Department of State notifications as to quarantine requirements, as to testing requirements, as to passing through a third safe country requirements. All of that gets updated sometimes weekly, and even if you booked your ticket 2 weeks ago, the day before, 3 days before, 5 days before, you have to keep checking. Things obviously are progressing, can be changed at any minute. I think that as people are getting vaccinated, hopefully sometime during the summer we'll get more and more embassies opening up on the outskirts of Europe and then within the Europe itself, and we can start bringing people that are stuck over there. So that has to do with the latest travel restrictions. Travel restrictions, priorities, right? So another thing that happened is the administration created these priorities for visas. We are prioritizing spouses, immediate relatives of United States citizens. They're the biggest priority for the embassies. They were directed, advised to basically look through their database and to schedule immediate relatives of United States citizens first. At the bottom of the priority list are all non-immigrant visas, which is tourism, which is, students, and other categories of non-immigrant visas. I think I'm going to talk about it maybe next week more. I feel like one of those late night hosts, how they have introductory monologues and then they have the main topic of the conversation. So the main topic of conversation today are waivers. I will talk about specifically what's called a 601A waiver, and next week I'll talk about a 601. It's a different type of waiver. So what are we talking about today? There is a group of people who entered the United States through the border. That means they did not come and did not present themselves for inspection to an immigration officer at a point of entry. And point of entry can be an airport, which is contrary to popular belief, majority of people who are in this country without documents actually entered with a valid visa and overstayed, not entered through the border. Different topic of conversation. But there are people who are in this country and they don't have a record of entry. Not the same thing as when you entered with someone else's or a fake passport or a fake visa. That's the topic of conversation for next week. Now we're talking about if you cross the border, you don't have a record of being admitted, meaning you didn't talk to an immigration officer who inspected you and gave you the ability to cross the border into the United States. So the concept to understand is that the United States government understands that you're physically here, but doesn't recognize that you're actually legally here, right? So it's as if you're existing in this dual reality. Physically, you're here, but legally, you're not here because you don't have a record of entry into the United States. Before the Obama administration, the only way to deal with the situation would be for you to leave the United States, stay out for 10 years, depending on how much unlawful presence you have acquired, and then go through the visa process in your home country. Obviously, separation from your friend, from your family, your closed ones, the life that you've built here for 10 years for most people was unreasonable and unfathomable and just impossible to do. So what happened under the Obama administration? There was a waiver process that was created. The common name for it is the 601A waiver, which refers to the form that is filled out as part of the waiver. Of course, just like with everything else in the immigration, the form is just a step, it's just a base. The form itself is never enough. It's not the end thing. Immigration is never just about, oh, I filled out this form, I paid, I filed, that's it. Obviously, every single form has to be based on and include other things with it. So you cross the border, you're here, let's say you've been here for 10 years. Let's say you have a spouse who's a U.S. citizen or green card holder. Doesn't make a difference right now. Or let's say you have a U.S. citizen parent, or let's say you have a U.S. citizen child who is over 21 and they petition for you. What happens then is that once the family-based petition is approved, you have to seek the waiver. In the simplest terms, you go to the U.S. government, you say, hey, U.S. government, I know I crossed the border. I know it's a violation of immigration laws. But if I were to be removed or go back to my home country, my relative would experience an extreme hardship without me here in the U.S. and or they're unable to follow me back home to my home country because they would experience a hardship. Now, and this is very tricky, although your child who's over 21 can petition for you, do the first step of the process, for the purposes of obtaining a waiver, you need a qualifying relative, the person who would experience the hardship. That person can only be either your parent, who's a U.S. citizen or green card holder, or your spouse, who's a U.S. citizen or green card holder. The children do not qualify as qualifying relatives. A lot of people are puzzled when they find that out, but this is my child. I think the position is once the child is over 21, they're an adult. They can make their own decision. They don't need mommy and daddy anymore. They can live here by themselves. They have oftentimes their own family. They might not even live together. So the child, again, doesn't qualify. The child can do the first step, but you cannot rely on the child and the hardship to the child or to young adult, because at that point they would be 21. Or even if you have other U.S. citizen children who are younger, you cannot rely on them solely to obtain the waiver. Having little children can factor into the hardship that we can show for the spouse, or if you're a single parent, for your parents, but they cannot in and of themselves be the anchor, the relative, the person who you're relying on for the waiver. Okay? Now, the waiver itself. The waiver is complicated process, multi-step process. Many different things are included in it. There is no one single definition of a hardship. For some people, their loved ones may have a severe medical condition for which they need treatment, and they relying on their spouse for medical insurance, for work, for psychological, emotional, physical support. That person might not have anybody else to care for them medically, and they may not be able to follow your U.S. citizen spouse may not be able to follow you to your home country because they don't speak the language, or they won't get the same medical care, or they won't be able to get the work because let's say they are a nurse or some sort of professional here, and over there they would have to start, from scratch. Simply putting down that I don't want to be separated from my husband or wife or parent, or simply putting down that they will experience a hardship because we will be separated, is not enough. It has to be something beyond just the regular separation of the families. It has to be something more than that. Because the position is you can always follow your spouse, or bring your parent along with you to your home country if they want to. So it has to be something beyond just, I want to live here and I want them to live with me and I just don't want to be separated with them. That's never going to be enough. So medical condition. Sometimes it's financial hardship in supporting the kids, even if two parents are working. Sometimes it is emotional. Sometimes the person relies on their spouse because they've suffered trauma as a child, or they had a severe trauma in a previous relationship, such as abusive relationships and stuff like that, and they rely on their current spouse for that emotional support. Please note, it's not just medical, it's not just financial, it's not just emotional. It can be many different factors that are stacked on top of each other, stacked together, right? So just because the person is healthy physically doesn't mean that hardship is not possible. We talk to you and we gather a lot of different facts from your background, from your history, from your daily life. We see your financials. We do financial statements. Sometimes, if it's warranted, we'll ask you to do an evaluation with a specialist in order to see what is in there. Sometimes people have symptoms of severe anxiety, depression, sleeplessness, and they just think it's just a regular part of life, and they've never been to a professional, they've never spoken to a psychologist or a social worker, and they don't even know, or they repress the trauma that they have experienced before. It's not easy for everybody to just talk about it. Not everybody can come out and say, oh, my first sexual experience, was a rape or something like that. Not everybody can openly talk about it. Sometimes it takes work with a professional to get all this trauma out. Or, I lost my mom as a young child, and my wife, gave me that love and that family I depend on her, something I've never experienced before. So hardships are complicated. They are not the same for everybody. Everybody's circumstances is different. I never stop repeating that. Please don't compare yourself to other cases, because you may seem on the surface that your case is similar, but I promise you there's something most likely in it that separates you from your friend, your coworker, your relative, you this, and the other. I hear a lot of the times, but my friend did this and that. Doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that your case is identical. It really doesn't mean anything, right? So what happens? We prepare the waiver, we file it with USCIS, and then we wait. When the waiver is approved, we go through the process called consular processing. So up until now, all of this happens, you are still here in United States. We go through the process of consular processing, which I discussed before. We submit all of the documents, and then at the very end, we get an email from an embassy that says your immigrant visa interview was scheduled for, let's say, June 1st. Usually it's about 4 or 5 weeks in advance, but with COVID and stuff, sometimes we've had it within 7, 8, 5 days. I think the closest was like 5 days out. That's only because of COVID and because of changing openness of the embassies. So you're still in the United States. You have that now appointment at the embassy. This is when we have to prepare. You have to be prepared and to leave the United States, because the very last part of the equation is the following. You leave the United States, you go to your home country. In your home country, you attend a medical exam. You attend the interview, you provide all of the original documents, which we prepare you for the interview. We tell you what to bring, we register your appointment, we go through the whole process with you. On the day off, you come to the embassy, the officer has a full immigrant visa interview with you. It is the same type of interview if you have never had been to United States and your loved one now applied for you, as if you've always lived back home. So the full-blown immigrant visa interview. And if everything goes well, your passport would be returned with an immigrant visa in it. And then usually it's given like for 4 or 6 months. During that time, you have to return to United States. You have to enter United States with that visa. When you enter United States, you're now a permanent legal resident, and you will get your green card in the mail. The embassy itself never issues green cards. Only USCIS here in the United States issues the green card. The embassy can only issue an immigrant visa and put it in your passport, which allows you to travel back to the United States. Right. So that's the overview of the process. And just, 2 caveats. 1, we always ask you if you've had any arrests, if you've ever been printed in the United States or anywhere else in the world. If you choose not to be honest about it, and that comes out of the interview, you will not, depending on what it is. But that can have a lot of negative consequences, from misrepresenting, concealing a fact, fraud, to it could have been an arrest with which, if we had known about it, we wouldn't even let you go out there, because we know that you won't be allowed back in. So we always ask about criminal history, and please understand that there is no point of concealing it. You will be fingerprinted. Department of State and USCIS will do background checks on you, and in 99.9% of cases, it will come out, right? So you got to be honest with this. I know you want the immigrant visa. I know you want everything to be okay, but you have to be honest about it, because when you sign an agreement with us, a part of the agreement says I will be truthful with an attorney. I cannot give you competent legal advice. I cannot guide you properly through the process if you choose not to tell me something like that. That's point number one. Point number two, if you've crossed the US-Mexico, the US-Canada border by foot, I always ask you if you've ever had interactions with ICE, and you say no to me, and I say, okay, no problem. And then we go through the process, and it comes out that you did try to enter through the border once. You were captured by ICE. You gave them a different name, but you were fingerprinted. But because you gave them a different name, you're thinking to yourself, I gave a different name. They don't know who I am. Everything in immigration revolves around your fingerprints. Everything is digitized. They pull records from completely everything. We have clients who applied for visas in the 90s and sometimes even the 80s, and the embassy knows about your applications and things you've said in those applications because they're digitizing all the records, and they can pull all of that. And if you don't disclose it to me, you can end up being stuck abroad. If we know about it, if we know that, let's say you were captured by ICE, you were printed, and then let's say either you were returned, or even if you were not fingerprinted, but you were returned and your picture was taken, there are ways to deal with it. There are ways to go about it in most circumstances, but in order for me to be able to help you, I need to know about it. So if you tell me that, yes, I've attempted more than once to cross the US border and the first time was unsuccessful, I can get those records from the Customs and Border Patrol, from CBP. I can determine whether there is an issue or not an issue, and then we can move forward, right? Yes, it will add a little bit of processing time because the records take time to obtain. Yes, it will add a little bit of a cost because, it's more work to be done, but at the end of the day, the only person it benefits is you, because it can make a difference between you having a smooth 3-week, visit back home and coming back here to your current home, or being stuck out there, potentially for a few years while the necessary waivers and permissions are pending. So I strongly encourage you to always be truthful and honest with us, right? And then we can definitely help you with whatever it is that the issue is. There are circumstances in which we do the background search and we determine for whatever reason that the person can go out there because they won't return. And then we'll tell you, listen, if you go out there, you're facing being stuck while another waiver is pending, or you can go out because, let's say, for example, you won't be eligible to come back for whatever the case is. And every case is individual. Every single person's facts are individual to themselves, right? The waivers are complicated. You need good writing, good legal writing for it, because you are presenting yourself. And it's a lot of work because you don't get to have a waiver interview. You don't get to go in front of an officer and tell them your life story. They only see you and your life story on a piece of paper and through the evidence that are submitted. So if we're telling you we want A through Z, it's not because I'm trying to make your life difficult. That's never what I'm trying to do. It is because I think it is necessary for me to get those documents to present the complete picture, right? To make the officer on paper understand your life's journey, where you are, what you will experience, what you're experiencing now, and things like that. And medical records, a lot of the times, are a very, very big part of it. And we struggle sometimes because I understand that sometimes the doctors don't want to write the letters. They just print out a stack of documents for you and they're like, give it to them. But that is not enough, because the officer is not a medically trained professional, and give them 500 pages. They're not going to go and Google every single, medication that you're taking, and it's impossible. We do need concise letters from the doctors. We're not asking you to do anything out of this world. We're asking them to provide diagnosis, treatment plans, medication, 2-3 paragraphs, and we find that a lot of the times is a big struggle for us. But we do our best, and we put our best effort forward to make sure that every person is represented in a best way. Also, the last part, just because you've been arrested before doesn't necessarily mean that your waiver is not going to get approved or that you can't go out of this country. It depends how long ago, how many times, what for, the disposition of the case. So if you have had criminal interactions with the police, negative interactions, if you've been arrested before, you need to disclose this, talk to us, show us those certificates, and then we'll be able to tell you what can or cannot be done in your specific case. Okay? Oh wow, that was 25 minutes. A lot of information, a lot of stuff to digest. I love doing waivers because I love to see people, have hope after often being here for such a long time, have the ability to come back and live a free, successful, better life, which is what we all want. So I do love waivers a lot, and I hope a lot more people will start taking advantage of it. I think we've sent over 100 people back, and they've come back successfully. Everybody's journey is different, but we will be there for you every step of the journey. And if you need us, we're here. Email us, call us, FaceTime us, WhatsApp us, Skype us. We're here and we're available. If you have any questions, if you want me to talk about anything else, if you have anything you want me to expand on or explain more or explain again, I can do that. I can talk about immigration for hours. I wish everybody a great Friday. I hope it's going to be sunny. Everybody gets to go out, bike, and enjoy. I will see everybody back here next Thursday for another dose of immigration information with me. I was very happy to see everybody, and I will see you hopefully soon in 1 week. Have a great weekend, everyone.